Today, Microsoft posted a new blog post about progressive web apps, what their plans are, and a little clarification. You can take advantage of progressive web apps on Windows. So what did they say, and what can you do to get ready? Hey guys, Chris Love here, the owner of Love to Dev, and as always, a big fanatic of progressive web apps. And today, Microsoft released a brand new blog post kind of detailing a little more about their plans for progressive web apps. And if you haven't paid attention, they've been very excited about progressive web apps for a while. And last month, or actually back in December, which is the previous month now, right before Christmas, the Windows Insider build, I think 17063, released with service worker support turned on by default. And the plan is to make service workers live for everybody as soon as the next major Windows operating system release goes out to the general public. Right now it's in the Insider preview builds, which I have on my desktop and have been using. But they wanted to more or less clarify what their plans are, what the strategy is behind progressive web apps. And they put it in written form. I didn't feel like this really gave us a lot more insight beyond what we've already done or what we've learned. Basically, Karupa gave a presentation at the Edge Developer Summit back in September, where he highlighted most of the content that was in the blog post today. And also, I had a chance to sit down with Karupa and talk to him for about an hour a few weeks after the Edge Summit, and that's also here on the YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out if you want like an actual conversation with him. So what I thought I'd do is actually go through some of the notes that I made based on their blog post, see if I couldn't clarify some concepts and ideas for you a little bit, and maybe speculate a little bit about what things are going to be like, and also talk about where I think things might be a little short, and also what you as a developer can do to get ready, because progressive web apps are a major player in the development space when it comes to building client experiences this year and over the next few years. I guarantee that, and that's because all of the major platforms are excited about it, including Apple. Now, Apple hasn't necessarily said anything directly publicly about it, but their recent actions are definitely indicating that they are trending towards making progressive web apps a major player on iOS. So let's talk about Microsoft and progressive web apps, and more importantly, Microsoft Edge, the Microsoft Store, and how Bing plays into the progressive web application story on Windows. So the first thing, like I said, they are really in on progressive web apps, and if you've got build 17063 or above, which we're somewhere in the 80s, or I don't know where we're at right now, but it's been a few months since that release came out. I think we've had 2 major updates since then on the Insider's track, and obviously service workers had been turned on there, and so we've got the ability to do that. Okay, now basically what they announced in the blog post is that they're going to start amping up essentially the way they're indexing progressive web apps. If you haven't known, they have been using the Bing crawler, which is Microsoft's search engine, so think Google, and they go out and crawl the same sites that Google does, and they've got this essentially the infrastructure in place. And one of the things that Microsoft does with the crawler, and Google does as well, is they evaluate what are people doing with their sites, essentially what technologies are they using, how are they writing the code, and from a browser perspective, what they look for are what are the actual trends that we need to maybe improve our engines to work with to make sites work a little better, and also keep from breaking the web, which is a whole separate topic. But they're going to use that to their advantage here with progressive web apps, because they can detect if a site is being served via HTTPS, which is a progressive web application requirement. Does it have a valid web manifest, and is it using a service worker? Now, those are the 3 core technical tenets of a progressive web application, and obviously there's more to the story than that, but those are kind of the minimum guidelines from a technical perspective. And what they're doing is, if your site meets those criteria, then they're going to take it to the next level, and they're going to evaluate whether or not they're just going to automatically submit your progressive web application to the Windows App Store, and that can be a very big deal. Now, the trick is here, they don't really define what's going to be qualified as something they're going to automatically submit and what's not going to be automatically submitted. And I think that's kind of one of the gray areas that I've been a little bit troubled with, is there's no clear guidelines to this. Now, they're not alone in this kind of story. Recently, I posted information about how Apple has been rejecting and removing apps from the iOS App Store because they don't feel like they're app-like enough. And basically, a lot of sites, there are a lot of applications that are generated with app generation services are the prime candidates to get tossed out of the App Store. And when they do this, they're actually telling the application owners that they feel like they should go to the web, and I take this as a clear signal that they're basically telling these App Store owners, become a progressive web application because that's where you really need to be and get out of our store. Okay, well, I'm a little extreme there, but that's okay. Okay, so so Microsoft feels that progressive web apps should be discoverable, and I got my notes here because there's a lot of stuff going on with this, and that's what they're doing. They're basically using the tool that they have to go out and discover progressive web apps and evaluate how websites are built, and they're finding the sites that qualify. Now, up to this point, they say they found about 1.5 million websites that meet the 3 core criteria, being HTTPS, web manifest, and that registered service worker. But there's a few more things. They kind of wanted to try to articulate what does it really mean to be the progressive web app that could get submitted to the store. And so it goes a little beyond that. One of the things that the criteria that they talked about is sites don't really have what I would call a valid web manifest file. They say that a lot of the web manifests that they're encountering are basically being generated by favicon generators. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but these favicon generators are not giving you a true valid web manifest file. They're looking for certain fields to be populated, like name, description, these kind of things. And these favicon generators aren't getting that part done for you. And I'm not even sure if I've really seen a favicon generator truly give you the base set of icons that you need to be a progressive web application. And that's one of the reasons why I made the video in the blog post on creating a baseline set of icons for your progressive web app. Now, the Bing thing will automatically submit a small set of progressive web apps to the store. It doesn't mean you can't manually submit on your own. You're absolutely perfectly free to go do that. You do need to create an AppX file for that. I'm not going to get into the details of that. It's kind of technical stuff. But what I will tell you is if you want to make sure you've got the right icons, you got a valid manifest file, and even got at least a baseline service worker, and you want to automate that submission to the App Store, to the Microsoft Windows App Store, go to PWAbuilder.com. This is a fantastic tool that the Microsoft Edge team has created. It used to be called Manifold.js, but now it's called PWA Builder to make it a little more appropriate. And all you got to do, submit your URL, walk through the wizard, maybe upload a logo if it doesn't pick up one automatically from your site. It'll automatically create the image array that you need, as well as package things up for you and handle that automatic submission to the Windows Store for you. You will still need to do some steps to kind of verify that app submission. It's got details and guidelines on there. I'll tell you what, I'm going to post another video walking through the PWA Builder to show you how that's done. That way you can reference that, and I'll also make another blog post to supplement that. Okay? Now, PWA is really awesome about that. Okay, so some of the questions that they kind of ask are, well, should you focus on creating a UWP or a Universal Windows Platform application or a progressive web app? And well, here's the trick. Progressive web apps are Universal Windows Platform apps or UWP apps. And that's because Edge is a key component of being of a UWP. It's something you can use in a UWP, but basically, if you make a progressive web app, it is equivalent to if you made it in Xamarin or C# or whatever you may have made. Now, here's the real reason why the App Store is kind of the cool thing, right? If you need platform integration with Windows, this is the only way you're going to get it. Okay, you're not going to be able to hook into some of the deep APIs that aren't, say, web standards, like hooking into the platform contact list or using Cortana, for example, or maybe getting into some of the virtual reality stuff that hasn't been dropped, say, into WebVR necessarily. There's a lot of interesting things that you can get into. For the most part, for me, it's not something that really gets me super excited as a developer just yet, but I know some of you out there, it does get you super excited. And this is the cool thing about it. Now, as a business owner, and I have basically a content presence on the internet with LoveToDev.com, does my Love to Dev qualify as something that would be an app candidate for the Windows App Store? And this is something that I don't feel like they really articulate well enough. They talk about stuff being app-like, and so does Apple. But neither one of them really talk about what does that really mean. Now, honestly, I don't really envision LoveToDev.com being in the Windows App Store, and that's because it's basically an informational site, and it's also really my sales tool to get people to hire me to do progressive web application developing, consulting, that kind of stuff. But I do have some other apps, which I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through the PWA builder with one of these to see what the App Store submission process is, and that's going to be my 2048 app. And if you're not familiar with that, it's a cool little game that I got addicted to a few years back. And there's a nice little web version that I made into a progressive web app. So I'm going to go see what the submission process is like and see if my app actually gets accepted. We'll see. Anywho, so that's the question. Is it an app or is it not an app, and is it store worthy or not store worthy, that kind of thing. I think it's a little ambiguous. The best I could get out of my Microsoft contacts is it's ambiguous. So part of it, and they did allude to it in the blog post, is they're trying to figure out what the criteria really should be. And I think they're only going to do that if they get a lot more experience. They're looking for data, basically, to do analysis. They're looking to get experience. What are we seeing out there? What are business owners asking for? What are our consumers or our end users actually asking for? And they're going to try to merge the two together. I think as the year progresses, by next year, we'll have a better, clearer vision on what that really means. But for now, I say just go ahead and try. See what happens. Maybe you get in the store. Maybe it is a benefit to you. Now, something that they did allude to that I thought was very interesting is if you do get into the store and your application, your PWA is, say, installed from the store, you get store analytics. And these are things that are kind of valuable. I know a lot of the progressive web app advocates like myself have actually been interested and curious, and we've asked the Chrome team about this, and they're just like, I don't think we'll be, anyway, that is the number of installs, the number of uninstalls, and then other kind of statistics around App Store type or app activity that wouldn't necessarily be captured in your web server logs or Google Analytics. And this can be very valuable in understanding how well your application is performing from an engagement level, and that's a very key aspect of progressive web applications. So that alone may be worth it for you to get that App Store presence, just so you can get some stats and maybe start getting a little vision of what's going on with your actual users as far as consuming and engaging with your brand and your app or whatever. So, alrighty. I did have some other questions, and this is one that, gosh, just darn it, just keeps bugging the crap out of me, and I just don't feel like I've been getting a good answer on this. And that is, it's either Windows position right now seems to be either you're a website in or a web app in the browser with the address bar and the Edge browser Chrome, or you're in the store and you're launching that way to get the full a window kind of effect and all the other benefits like a start menu presence. Well, there's still no answer on that right now. Now, in the past, under Windows 8, with the Metro version of Edge, you could pin to the start menu and you could actually do a live tile. And I love that, but they took it out with Windows 10. Now, you would think, wow, they had it working before. Why isn't it working now? And to be honest, I'm not there. I don't have access to the code, but were some technical challenges to that. And I don't want to get into it because, you know, that's honestly not my place to be, I guess. But basically, I would say it's on the list, but it's a low priority to them right now. But I think this is kind of one of those things where Microsoft has done something that the Chrome team or the Google hasn't gotten to yet, and that is progressive web apps in the Google Chrome store or whatever that's going to be, or even the Play Store. They kind of jumped way over that, but they didn't give us that add to home screen experience. And of course, my Microsoft friends kind of joke at me and go, "We don't have a home screen." Well, yeah, you jumped out of mobile. We got it. Okay. But you have the start menu and you have a desktop. And I can do Chrome on desktop to add to the home screen, or add to the desktop, if you will, and launch with the full screen experience. I really wish they would add that capability there. Right now, if you do pin your site to the start menu, it pins it to the URL that you're currently on. It doesn't honor the web manifest file to actually let you define what that start URL is going to be, and it also doesn't give you the ability to do your brand logo. So those are some shortcomings right now. I really do wish they would put a little bit of effort into trying to make that work, because that would be super awesome. Because I really honestly don't feel like the majority of progressive web apps will really be App Store apps per se, in the vein of that. And honestly, most people discover content online via search engines, and right now that number is 93%. And honestly, that to me is the real progressive web app store, is search engines. And I know they kind of had tossed around the idea of possibly giving some sort of visual cue in the search listings if a site, if they would do that. I know there are sort of legal, ethical implications about that, but you know, Google's doing their AMP stuff. Why not do this? I really wish they would in Bing, but I know there's internal political battles, why not? But for me, I vote for giving them some sort of visual cue. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Okay, my next questions were, what about line of business applications that enterprises may want to make available through the App Store to get that UWP experience? And since I don't have any real experience playing with the App Store enterprise story, because I just don't play with UWP apps, I don't really have a good answer on that. What I was told is it's probably going to be basically the same story. You would just create an AppX, submit it, and then it would go through that same channel experience. So with that, you know, that's fine and dandy on that. I need to play with that a little bit, because I've got some ideas around enterprise apps and progressive web apps, and I need to kind of flesh that out. So as I do that, I will definitely post some information about that as well. Now, my final question, and I didn't quite get an answer on this one, and I think it's asking the wrong people, because they weren't really App Store people, right? They were the browser people, because that's who I know, right? Anyway, what about payments through your progressive web app? Because normally, if you go through an App Store, you got to give the App Store 30% of the cut, right? They take the VIG. And normal credit card processing fees are somewhere between if you're really lucky, 1.5%, but usually 2 to 3% of the actual transaction fee. But App Stores are usually 30%, which is just massive. Which is another reason why I have really stayed away from doing apps, because I really just think that's just evil. So I didn't really get an answer on that one. So can you still use your existing credit card processor, or are you required to go through Windows or Microsoft to actually get the payment? I don't know yet. Sorry, guys. Maybe an App Store policy that I just haven't come across. Maybe they've changed it. Like I said, I just haven't really paid much attention to App Store stuff, because it's just not somewhere I play. So maybe if you've got the answer to that question, feel free to leave that in the comment section below. In fact, if you've got any questions about any of this stuff, please leave those in the comment section below. And you know, I talk to the Microsoft Edge guys all the time. And if it's something big, I can maybe ask them if I don't have the answer. But a lot of times I may have the answer for you. Now, if you think this is kind of fun, useful, hit that like down there, and definitely hit the subscribe button, because I don't want you to miss some of the other videos I'm going to be posting, because I'm going to be doing that PWA submission video sometime in the next few days, and you definitely want to see how that goes. So anyway, again, if you got any questions or comments about Microsoft and progressive web apps, please leave them in the section below. And if you are a developer, you want to get ready for progressive web apps. Like I said, they're huge right now. All the platforms are really getting excited about them. You got Google and Chrome pushing things really hard on Android, and you got Microsoft pushing things on Windows. You got Samsung Internet is super hot about these, and Samsung's like the biggest phone manufacturer right now. And Firefox is excited about these, and believe it or not, Apple is getting excited about progressive web applications, and there's clear signs that progressive web apps are going to be a big deal on iOS sometime later this year. You want to know how to build progressive web apps, and it's more than just upgrading your site to HTTPS. It's more than just having a valid web manifest file, and it's more than just registering a service worker. There is so much to building an awesome progressive web app. There's a massive story behind service workers, and then there's a whole user experience story, web performance optimization, tooling, and automating some things so that you make sure that you ship the best experience possible and don't ship some sort of subpar experience that makes your stakeholders not happy with you, because stakeholders love this idea. I can't tell you how much, every time I've talked to stakeholder type people and show them this stuff, their eyes get big with excitement because they see the potential from their end. You don't want to miss this out, and that's why I've created the online course, Progressive Web Application from Beginner to Expert, and I definitely want you to be in on it. And if you click the link below, you'll get the best price available right now, and you'll be able to sign up and get started, hit the ground running, actually walk through building a real e-commerce store with me so that you can see how to apply a lot of different principles of progressive web application development to deliver a great experience to your end users. So with that, I'm going to leave you and just keep being excited about progressive web apps. Learn all you can and start shipping things and see what happens if you put things in the Microsoft Store. You may be pleasantly surprised.